Good, happy Monday morning. I'm Riley King, and welcome to the Riley King Newscast. Let's get started. Attorney General investigating fatal stabbing in Manchester. New Hampshire's Attorney General is investigating a fatal stabbing in Manchester. Authorities said a man was taken to the hospital Sunday around 4 p.m. with a stab wound, where he later died. The victim's identity is being withheld pending notification of his next of kin. An autopsy is expected Tuesday. Investigators said the victim was apparently involved in a physical altercation with another man on Union Streets. The stabbing suspect is described as a white man approximately 5 feet 7 inches tall with a thin build, a buzz cut, and a tattoo on the right side of his face and slash or neck. He was last seen wearing a leather jacket, a gray or brown hoodie, a sweatshirt, and khaki pants. The AG's office said he is believed to have used a knife during the attack and may still be in possession of it. Anyone with information is asked to call Detective Joe Lorenzo at 603-793-5507. Senate to vote on opioid crisis funding Monday. Let's take a listen to the video right now.
Well, tomorrow the U.S. Senate is expected to vote on a bill that could be a game changer when it comes to fighting heroin and fentanyl addiction here in the Granite State. It has the full support of our delegation, but some very high-profile progressive senators from neighboring states are not on board. The opioid epidemic still silently rages on the streets of New Hampshire, but the long-awaited help of significant federal funding could finally be on the way. The 21st Century Cures Act just passed the House. It contains $1 billion to fight drug addiction. Senator Jeanne Shaheen says half of that money will be made available to states next year based on need.
We're very hopeful that that means New Hampshire will be at the top of that list. Sadly, we're at the top in terms of the problem, so we should be at the top in terms of resources.
But the bill has faced opposition from Senate progressives like Elizabeth Warren, who says funding for the opioid crisis and other priorities is political cover for massive giveaways to pharmaceutical companies and regulatory rollbacks at the FDA.
If this bill becomes law, there is no question it will contain some real legislative accomplishments. But I cannot vote for this bill. I will fight it because I know the difference between compromise and extortion.
Well, there have been some changes in the bill since she made those remarks, so I'm not sure where she is on it at this point, but the fact is there are significant resources in that bill to help families and communities who are struggling.
Part of that struggle in New Hampshire has been expanding the state's capacity to provide treatment for drug addiction. Senator Shaheen says this bill can pay for that and much more.
We're hoping that it will address the major aspects of this problem.
Again, the Senate is expected to vote on this bill tomorrow. It flew through Congress by a vote of 392 to 26. So if that's any indicator, it could be on the president's desk very soon.
Okay, and there you go on that report. "33 bodies recovered in Oakland warehouse fire. Search continues." Let's take a listen to this video from ABC News.
We begin tonight with the rising death toll and the mounting questions in what is now the deadliest fire ever in Oakland, California. This is all that remains. Today, investigators sifting piece by piece through the rubble, what was once a crowded warehouse party that went up in flames in mere seconds. There are now 33 confirmed fatalities. The blaze overwhelming that building, trapping people inside. The search for loved ones painstakingly slow. Those families now are fearing the absolute worst. And late tonight, word that the district attorney's office has launched a criminal investigation into that fire. ABC's Neil Karlinski leads us off tonight.
Tonight in Oakland, as the number of people killed in this fire grows into the dozens, the painstaking search goes around the clock. Questions now mounting about whether the tragedy should have been stopped long before Friday night's inferno.
I feel like this was preventable, like a blind eye was turned towards this warehouse, this facility?
As far as preventable, absolutely. I am not going to make excuses for the city because we have documented, we have turned it in, we have called it in.
The building went up fast and burned ferociously Friday night. People weren't supposed to be living here. It only had permits as a warehouse. Yet code violations show a history of complaints, including about people inside. It was a well-known artist colony called the Ghost Ship and filled at the time for a concert when fire broke out.
I watched it burn for 4 hours. I could do nothing.
That's the back of the warehouse right there. And to give you a sense of how quickly that burned, the first responders are just right over here, only about a block away.
Most of the dead were on the second floor. Pictures on the warehouse's website show a maze of makeshift art studios before the fire.
It is tragic to watch so many people perish from a fire fatality in front of your eyes and have to be stoic in your job, be professional in your actions, and make sure that we're honoring the victims and their families to bring them safely out of the building.
Tonight, an emotional battalion chief says the impact is beyond what any of her firefighters imagined dealing with.
I think we were surprised at first to find that many bodies where we found them. And we are leaning towards, based on the fact that the bodies appeared to be on top of each other, that it was probably from a fall.
They were on the second floor and it caved in.
Parts of the second floor with burned pianos and other heavy objects are dangling precariously above fire crews, working methodically to recover victims with dignity and make sure what's left of the building doesn't come down on them. Google Earth pictures from the last several years show mounting piles of garbage outside the warehouse, part of the fuel for this blaze that never should have been there. Oakland's mayor tonight promising to find out if the city's worst fire in history was preventable.
I right now have a team of city employees combing through every public record that we have of this building.
And Neil joins us live from the scene. Neil, you're hearing that it could still be another day before investigators reach all of those victims?
Cecilia, that's right. It is very slow going. They say they've only made progress through about 35, maybe 40% of the building. Another day or two left, they say. In fact, you can see the planks of wood behind me. They're using that to literally shore up the walls and make sure the rest of the building doesn't come toppling down on top of those firefighters, Cecilia.
A long process ahead. Neil, thank you.
Okay, and there you go on that report. Social media advertising spend set to overtake newspapers by 2020 research. Global advertising spend on social media is set to overtake newspaper for the next 4 years, according to a report released on Monday. Trump takes fresh sweep at China after controversially Taiwan call. Let's take a listen to this video from CNN.
Fact-checking is quite a cottage industry these days when Donald Trump makes these sorts of allegations. On China being a currency manipulator, it's fair to say in the past 2 decades, until about 2 years ago, China did have a policy where it did deliberately weaken its currency to help its exporters. But that changed about 2 years ago. In fact, the yuan until recently has been strengthening. Talking to one analyst today, told CNN that if China actually just let the markets decide where the yuan should be and didn't interfere with the markets, the yuan would be much, much weaker than it is today. So you can say that the Chinese government is indeed manipulating the yuan, but to the benefit of the US, because it's keeping the value of the yuan up stronger than it would otherwise have been. Take a look at these numbers here. It gives you an idea. Since the election of President-elect Trump, the Chinese yuan has indeed depreciated by about 1.8% there against the US dollar. But if you look at what the yuan has done against the euro and the yen, it's actually stronger. So they're obviously not depreciating across the board here. So Donald Trump saying that it's manipulating the currency, it sort of resonates with a worldview, if you like, Natalie, that Trump had in the 80s and 90s. And one of his senior policy advisors actually said, he wrote earlier this year, that Ronald Reagan imposed big taxes on Japanese goods back in the 80s because the Japanese were selling cheap, undervalued goods into the US. And that is what Donald Trump is thinking that China continues to do today. Whether that's true or not, that's a whole difference.
Okay, and there you go on that report. That does it for the Riley King Newscast right here on the Riley King Network. Have a great rest of your Monday. See you back here later on. Goodbye.